get started here. Welcome to Fantasy Football Sunday, Best Ball Strategies. Thanks for everybody checking us out and coming in here. We're going to get right into it. We're a few minutes behind the schedule already, so let's get pass over to you here. We'll start talking about when you construct your best ball roster, what is your number one rule entering any kind of tournament?
Entering any kind of tournament. I want to make sure that we have at least a determined amount of running backs and receivers. I preach flexibility. I think that absolutely matters in best ball. Because you never know what the board's going to give you. But because everyone's based off the ADPs, a lot of time you can kind of map things out. I think the back end of the first round looks pretty similar for the teams like 6 through 12, and same from 1 through 5. We saw that in the redrafts for the Series XM 7 Classic too. Whether it be best ball or redraft, I think it looks the same. But having flexibility, whether it be 6 running backs, 7 receivers, 7 receivers, or 7 running backs, 6 receivers, that kind of thing. I think having the flexibility makes a big difference with that and what you want to do.
I was going to guess same question over to you there. Number one rule.
Yeah, it's definitely just don't lock into anything. Have a rule, don't have a rule. You know, going in there, flexible, you know, we were just kind of touching on there. Whether it be like don't go in there, hey, I have to have these stacks, hey, I have to build it this way. It's all about flexibility. Just making sure I don't get locked into anything to get top vision. Because that's how last year my exposures were way too similar. Gotta have this guy, I have to have this guy, I have to make it work. So it's just, you're playing the odds, you're looking for that lottery ticket, you're trying to get something different, so just flexibility.
And I think for myself, it comes down to changing the mindset. You mentioned redraft there a little bit. I think you have to change that mindset when you go into a best ball type format, because in a redraft, you want that consistency. You want to make sure you get those points every week, whatever that looks like. In Dynasty, you're looking long term. Now, when we get into best ball, that's not necessarily the case. We want to swing for upside. Every single time I get out there, I want to swing for upside, especially later on in the draft. And when you get into these bigger and bigger tournaments, you have to find a way to differentiate your lineup. You can't go in there, for me, ADP across the board, because you're just going to have the same lineup as anybody else. And that's good. You'll have a good team, but you're not going to win. So you have to find those guys later on in the draft. We'll talk about some of our favorite best ball sleepers that you're going to get a little bit later. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. But you have to find a way to get those guys. You have to swing. You can't be afraid to lose. Right? That's the biggest thing. If you go in there wanting to be in the hunt, you're already out. So you've got to make sure that you're going in there and swinging. If you lose, but you have to find a way to differentiate, and that's by going with the upside. That's by taking a shot on a cross-key merit. Someone who maybe not the number one starter right now, but who's going to be starting, who knows, a little bit later. So we'll talk about that. I'll pass it back to you. Just probably should have done this at the beginning of the show, but just introduce yourself, where you're at, and all that kind of fun stuff.
My name is Joe Bartel. I've been at RotoWire now for the past 10 years. I hosted the Sirius XM show on Fridays. Then I have a separate Sunday show on Sirius XM, Angel Fire Radio. Do that in the mornings as well too. I think last year, my best one, I was in the Poodle for Underdog and was in the final. Had a Packers stack on my birthday, December 29th, against the Vikings. If they beat the Vikings, as a Packer fan, they also moved to the NFC North and had a chance to win $15,000. Jordan Love shoots the bed, Josh Jacobs fumbles in the second carry, and Romeo Dobson didn't get a single catch and finished 97 out of 100. So that would be my claim to fame last year from a best ball perspective, but been doing it a number of years now, having a lot of fun with that stuff. And I think it's, if nothing else, a good way to practice from all your fantasy seasons.
So hey, I'm Brian Hartman, been with the Fantasy Football Sports Advice Network for a couple years now. Podcast, too much fantasy football, YouTube, all that fun stuff, live shows. Claim to fame for his best ball last year. I sat up here and said Zach Ertz is the late round guy to grab, so let's hope we get it again this year.
Yeah, I'm Matt Donnelly with RotoBaller, and you know what? I'll be the first one to say it. I sucked at best ball for the longest time because I didn't change that mindset. I went into it like a redraft, and you know what? It didn't go well for me. So yeah, I rechanged the whole way of thinking. And when you get to a certain age, rechanging your way of thinking doesn't quite work the same way. My wife's been trying to change that thinking for a while. Hasn't worked for her, but here we are. And best ball's been coming along quite a bit better here recently. So if you guys have questions, feel free to ask them as we go around. If not, I'll just try to guide myself through this with a shoddy internet here and go from there.
There you go, great. Talk about your exposure levels in certain contests and how that affects your decision making in a draft.
And it's funny you get a mention, so it's going to go into those, avoiding those common mistakes in your best ball practice. And one of those happens to be player exposure, percentage of the time, the rosters, especially when you play 40 best ball leagues, right? You don't want to have that same lineup everywhere you go, because you know what, if it doesn't work out for you, it's not going to work out for you 40 times. So I try to keep, when I talk about my best ball exposure on certain players, there's certain guys I'll take a shot on a little bit later, those deep sleepers I may have a little bit of higher exposure on. But for the most part, I want to differentiate that line from one, not only from the rest of the people in the contest, but from all the contests that I'm playing. So I want to go out there, when you go get a lottery ticket at the local gas station, you're not going to go ask for 40 tickets with the same number. You can't do that. So it's no different with best ball. You're going to go out there and play a different ticket every single time you get out there to redeem. That's what that kind of comes down to. Limiting that exposure, keeping it down to maybe the guys that are a little bit higher on the board, maybe 10%, 15% there. A little bit later, I don't mind going to 30% on a dark horse. Because I know that's one of those players that nobody else is going to take. I'm willing to die on the sword on a guy that in the 20th round of a best ball, underdog, whatever that happens to be, I'm willing to put a little bit higher exposure on a guy there with the upside that could possibly come with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point too. I don't know, I want, and then I'll actually pose this question to you guys because I'm very curious. When you're doing the best ball and accumulating volume actually is a different answer to this too, right? If you're drafting in June or even after the NFL draft, there was R.J. Harvey in round 9, Judkins in round 8, and that doesn't look as good now. But you could get some of the values later on if you're able to speculate in the prospect. So I could look at the exposure I have right now, which I think is probably like 35% of R.J. Harvey. That came almost the week after the NFL draft, and that was when you're getting him 2 rounds later than where he's currently going. So I actually want to pose the question to you guys, does it change when you accumulate volume or when you're choosing the best balls? Because for me, this is basically year round. I'm a nerd, so I talk about this stuff the whole time, but there will be times of drafting a bit more heavy in April or May in particular than June and especially August. I feel like August at this point, doing a bunch of best balls, you're behind a lot of people.
Well, I mean, that's a good point there off the get-go. Like, if you're drafting in April, that changes everything. You're getting better value in April and in May than you're going to get it in August. I mean, training camp comes, injuries start coming, we start to see that market kind of adjust itself and kind of make itself right. Meanwhile, you know what? We've been deprived since the Super Bowl come April. We want to get back in there. You know what? Sometimes that leads to dumb decisions, and we buy into the hype, we buy into social media. I'm pretty sure these agents are feeding stuff out there no different than anyone else, and you kind of drink the Kool-Aid somewhat. But I mean, I like to get in there at the early times. I think that's when you get your best value on players that you believe in. If you've been following, but everyone who's playing best ball at a certain level has kind of watched that market for the last year. All of a sudden you see a big spike, you're like, okay, you know what, let's back off on this here for a little bit. It comes back to that market, that whole sell high, buy low type mentality. And that's kind of where I stand with it. I mean, if I can predict volume, it's kind of hard with the draft because the draft changes everything once again. Because as we said, you got to get the draft, feel good about certain players, maybe feel good about Jerome Ford. Okay, what's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns? And like, okay, they drafted Pitcher and Junkies, we're in trouble now. Now Ford's out of the picture altogether. And now here we are with circumstances out of our control, changing the whole market once again. So that's kind of where my thought process is. Get in early. I like to try and predict how the market's going to shape itself as far as volume is concerned. I love volume, I love high volume, I love opportunity. But I also like to look at that depth chart. Where has that player got that opportunity? And one of my guys last year, who's going to be one of my guys this year, is Jalen Coker there out of Carolina. I really believe this Carolina Panthers offense being better than what it was. Maybe I started drinking the blue Kool-Aid a little bit too early this year too, but I really believe that. I really believe in Breece Young doing his thing. I really believe in the pieces they've added there. And I think the whole offense as a whole is going to get going. And Coker is going to be even better this year. I think he's one of the deep sleepers again, who I see having a very good path behind McMillan. It's Adam Thielen, it's Jatavian Sanders maybe. I mean, Leggett, at some point you are what you are when it comes to football, and I think we have a pretty good idea what Leggett has been. He hasn't been that Deebo Samuel that we were promised coming out of college. So I like to try to predict that path of opportunities that's going to lead to volume. Snap share, first downs per route run, get into the whole analytics of it all, but that's kind of where that is.
think too with a lot of the exposure rate talks, I don't see enough people talking about like getting or managing the tournaments you're playing in, how many you're going into, but it's also the bankroll. Like you're having to keep track of the people that are coming in and then like, say your best ball budget's only $100 per year, you're probably not going to do $425 drafts, or if you do, you have to go about them completely different. Whereas like the exposure, kind of talking, you want to have that closer to like 8-12% somewhere in there, you don't want to go too heavy. But if you know you're only going to put in 4 into a contest that you can max out at 150, you probably want to go a little bit more string. You want to lean into those player takes that you have because you're really looking for that 1 in a million. You're not just going for that shotgun approach. You have to be a sniper. You have to hit it just perfect off. So I think just really recognizing how much you're going to be drafting, how much in each tournament, which ones to kind of take advantage of, and how much you're spending plays so much into those as well.
Let's kind of talk about that roster construction. So I think that's one of those things that people really wonder. You go 3 wide receivers, you go 3 receivers heavy early on, you go anchor running back. I'll point to you right here, because I'm already looking this direction. When you construct that roster, what is your ideal start? If you kind of control everything going on there, are you a heavy running back guy? Are you a heavy wide receiver guy? When do you want to hit that running back run? What's that look like for you? You take 3 quarterbacks, you take 2 quarterbacks. Like, what's your thought process as you go in there when you talk about constructing your roster?
I mean, if we're just like, in a vacuum, I'd love to get my running back. I'd love to get that first round running back, maybe second round, depending on where that value falls, what my draft room looks like. But, everybody wants to grab that stuff. Everybody wants to make sure you got that linchpin, because then you can be a lot more flexible. If you have to hit 4 straight wide receivers, that you can. If you have to take quarterback early, then you're kind of zigging and zagging throughout there. But the amount of times I fall behind, just looking at the roster, I didn't get that stud. I waited way too long to running back. I know 0 RB works, and we got the numbers behind it. Damn, if it doesn't feel bad. You sit there looking at the team and like those are the guys that we're leaning on. We don't even know where they're on the depth chart yet at this point. We don't know draft. So yeah, definitely running back heavy. I like to clean up the wide receivers for sure. Just their shotgun approach. You never know when you get that move from them.
And then back over to you here. When you talk, I'm going to change the question a little bit. When you know you're going into the draft and you get that draft slot, how much does that change your approach? Because I know when you take a look at it, if you're picking 101, comes back to you, then you look at that 2-3. How does that 2-3 affect what that 101 was to your roster? And when you try to predict how the draft is going to play out, let's be honest, when you go in there, you're going completely blind. You're going against people from all different kind of levels of drafting and whatnot. Like we sat here in the Kings Classic the other day, and I bet you in this redraft league, I could do the whole draft by myself and then auction every team off to whoever wants, because the ADP is probably going to be predictive of how the draft is going to go. So when I went into this 14-team league, at 101, I knew where I was going to go because I knew what was going to be there at 2 in the second, and then it was going to be there in the third round, and then it was going to get ugly after that. Now when you go into the best ball, you got a lot of wild cards possibly coming out there. You got people that, I've seen guys draft 4 quarterbacks just for fun, 5 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds, and you don't know what it's going to be. So you have to adjust on the fly, but when you go in and you get that draft slot, how does that change your roster construction, especially from 101 to 112 or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, maybe I haven't done enough following, but only seen one of those teams to be in a 4 quarterback strategy, which is annoying. I would say on this, I think, and I don't know, in my 10 years working at RotoWire, I don't know a time where the first 2 or 3 rounds from an ADP perspective is as defined and as cut and paste that seems to be not just in redraft, but in best ball. I can sit there and pick 2 and say, I like Bijan Robinson more than CeeDee Lamb, but I would much rather get the running backs that come back, Buck Irving, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor. If you're really in a great league, Derrick Henry falls back to you there. The running backs that come back in the second round are early picks. So I can like Bijan as much as I like over CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson, but if it ends up being where I get back in the second or third round, that I can almost take to the bank every single time. That's not how it's always been. And I've also made the argument that I think there are probably 16 first-round picks this year that you're probably comfortable picking the back end of the first round. So you get a Brian Thomas and a Drake London if you want to go that combo, or Ashton Genty and Drake London, for example. And there's more depth at that spot. You are chasing a bit more if you have an early pick. I think you get Jamar Chase, more than likely if you have 1-1, and then you could do the Bengals stack, which I'm sure we can talk about further. But for me, if you have an early first-round pick and I'm taking a receiver every time because I like the running backs that come back, After that point, and this is probably more an underdog than a DraftKings, the two platforms that I primarily play on, the running backs, the rookie running backs in rounds 5 and 6 are almost always from an ADP perspective at the back end of the 5-6 turn. And then I'll get a trade down to Henderson or RJ Harvey at that point. So I feel like it's actually really predictive from an ADP perspective that not enough people are throwing Zags, but I probably should be drafting more in August. That's been my problem.
And kind of keeping all of this roster construction type thing, because one of the biggest things we like to talk about and differentiating that lineup comes to stacking, not pairing. A wide receiver to quarterback is not a stack, it's a pair. Okay, I'm going to say that right now. Stacking, I'm thinking pancakes and 4 of them together, at least 3 pancakes together. So if you're going to stack, it has to be a quarterback, 2 wide receivers, or quarterback, tight end, wide receiver. When you go into your draft and you know you're going to want to do that stack if it presents itself, what are you looking for that first piece? Are you looking for that quarterback and then you're going right, wide receiver, running back, tight end, or are you going to get that wide receiver, then you're looking for that quarterback a little bit later? How are you going to differentiate your lineup with that stack? What's your thought process going through it?
I guess for me, it starts, stair stacking there, looking at like, all right, now I'm taking Trayvon Henderson. Like, all right, cool, I can get some Patriots players a little bit later, but it's game planning. All right, I know that Drake May is usually going to go around this round, so I need to start looking for. Am I playing for that quarterback there, or am I going to be looking for one sooner? And it's kind of, I guess that's where the beauty of going through so many drafts is. You kind of have that good feel of ADP, so you know where guys are going. All right, about this point is when I need to finish that stack for the Patriots, or I need to maybe pivot in case I can't finish up that Patriots stack. So it's just that awareness, that mindfulness of what's going on in the draft, not just you, but all these other teams. Because then you have to start looking too, all right, these teams are on a quarterback, they're going to be picking twice before it comes back to me. Probably stick a QB and reaching just a bit on ADP. So I think it's just, for me, I've got a game plan, I've got to map it out, and just slowly working it.
Yeah, question.
So you brought up like a really good topic of like being like a 1 and then what you're doing and going back to 2-3. What is your opinion on like team stacking versus like week 17 correlation? Because that one-on-one pick is very interesting. It's almost like a case study history because at 2-3, after you took Chase at one-on-one, you could either stack with T. Higgins, or you could attack week 17 with Marvin Harrison, or you could just dive in with both and you could just go 3 straight receivers. What's your thought process about prioritizing team stacking versus like the week 17 angle?
So I have Marvin Harrison hot takes. I know that's not the question here, but I don't want Marvin Harrison at all. But to your point, maybe this is why I'm not successful enough, because I don't think about those. I want to get into the dance before I'm worried about it. I don't have the uber confidence that I'm just going to necessarily have week 16, 17 all set. I talked with the Packers tonight last year, which would have been great up until week 17, when on my birthday I decided I should have bet, right? So I don't know if it's necessarily that I prioritize it as much. It definitely depends on how many drafts you're in and what degree and how much money, like we talked about, the bankroll that you're doing. I'm playing mostly $3, $5, $10 ones. We'll do a decent amount of best ball ones overall, the maybe 25, whatever it is, underdog, across RotoWire itself. And it's more for conversation, truthfully, from other content creators. I think these guys probably do it because they're really, really good at it. So maybe the better question is to it. I want to get into the dance first, and if it means that I end up having to go a little bit running back heavy towards the end of the draft because I didn't target them early enough, that's something I choose to do. I don't really look at week 16 and 17 as often.
Yeah, when we talk about stacks, one second. When we talk about those stacks there, I want to make sure that I'm not reaching at the same time, right? That's going to be the important thing. So if it comes down to that week 16, 17, if the player makes more sense in that round, that is probably the route I'm going to go. I want to stack, but at the same time, I don't want to reach for that stack. So I mean, if I get McMillan there and it's in the 3rd round, because I really like his rookie potential, then if Young falls to me a little bit later in the draft where I feel comfortable with him, that's where I'm going to take him. But if I have an opportunity to grab a Baker Mayfield in the right spot, that's probably I might fade that stack, maybe double up a little bit later. We got a question here in the back.
You mentioned that ADP obviously is what drives it, and what's using the second. What are your secondary and tertiary stacks that you're looking at, like points they can get, what are the metrics you guys that kind of separates you from want to follow them years ago?
So it's funny because I was a film guy. Like I'm a little bit older. I was a running back first kind of guy, dinosaur type mentality, and that's I've had to change that whole thought process over the years. And getting into analytics, which by the way scared the crap out of me because I don't know numbers very well, but luckily for me, there's a lot of people that do understand numbers. So one of the ones for me, especially looking at wide receivers, is that first down for a route run type opportunity. You're getting first downs on the routes that you're running because you're going to be targeted heavily more often than not. Maybe even shows a more indicative potential. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the result, but there is potential for a result that maybe target share. So if I'm seeing a guy getting those targets on a first down, route run, that type of opportunity, as a wide receiver, that's one of those little tiny analytical metrics that I'm looking for.
I think too, a lot of it, like, I mean, at this point in the season, we don't have exactly the data on, what's going to be the best defense. We have projection, PFF and some of those things come out and tell us, which is the best offensive defensive line, all that kind of stuff. But the Vegas numbers is kind of one of those easy things I can use. If you look right now, I think the Cardinals are top number 1 or number 2 in point total score based on what Vegas has. So kind of take that into consideration. Maybe maybe a little stuff through the Cardinals stats and try to integrate that over the more to with those teams that you can stat all that week 17 correlation. I get weird to try to find that combination where I can get 3 or 4 teams that all play multiple games in the playoffs while also being stacked. Just this year wasn't as fun. There's only one set that did all 4 teams against, most of the teams just 3 teams, but just going in there and
You're absolutely right. That's the way I look at it too. Is we don't know what the playing time. We're not in the coaching. We're just making determinations on scripted plays in that first series or whatever. I can definitely define what a good offense is, or what I think a good offense will be. And Vegas does too with the implied point totals that you'll see out there, which is part of their algorithm of win-loss totals. So I think using Vegas as a tool to determine what you expect the outcome to be, and either reinforcing it or going back and making you try to categorize what you think, that's an important part too. In my mind, I'm just trying to target one of the best offenses because that's the predictive thing I can do in May and June. It's not what happens in September.
We'll go 5 more minutes.
Here we got 5 minutes here, so if you have a question, feel free to throw it out there. But let's talk about some of our late round targets. Those guys that are going to give us the edge, or we're hoping they're going to give us this edge, those breakout potential players for your best ball teams.
So I typically get to that point, I'm doing a lot of DraftKings, so you get the 20th, you get the 19, 20, for me, I'm typically shooting my shot at a tight end or running back. This year I found the team insane, and we're talking Coker's a little bit ago in that shot. But hey, it's not a bad way to go as far as those tight ends go. He's in that conglomerate. He could be anywhere from the 2nd to 4th pass catcher, so that's the risk you're taking. But at the end of the day, if his offense is on the plus side of it, I just think that there's a pretty good shot you can take it. That 3rd tight end would probably be on the bench.
Maybe it's cheating now because I think the ADP is a little bit different, but Mason Taylor's going to be my most exposure player, I think, all this year. You look at the Jets offense, it's Garrett Wilson and then what? And we've seen time and time again in recent memory of the NFL, you can have a bad quarterback, which I think Fields is, sorry Jets fans, a bad quarterback, and still produce fantasy relevant numbers, whether it be Garrett Wilson as the 2nd target or Mason Taylor as Garrett Wilson as the 1st, Mason Taylor as the 2nd. Mason Taylor was tight end 21 for a long time. Again, this was more the May-June range of things, and I think he's creeping up in round 16 territory. I don't care. I'll have Mason Taylor in redraft in my tight end 1, but I think you can give me best ball as a tight end 3, and I feel much more confident about doing that. Diami Brown, another receiver there. Everyone wants to talk about Travis Hunter, rightfully so. I, like my guy, Devontae Adams, do not share the belief that Travis Hunter can actually play offense and defense the entire season. And I think Diami Brown, by default, is going to be a really good offense, hopefully, with Liam Cohen. So Diami Brown, last round pick. And then I guess at running back, nobody is understanding DJ Gibbons is the backup to the Colts. And Jonathan Taylor gets injured a lot. Don't talk to me about Khalil Herbert. He fumbled away his chance last year. Don't talk to me about Tyler Goodson. I know how bad he is as a Packer fan. DJ Gibbons was drafted to be the backup, and everyone's assuming he's going to be the 3rd or 4th guy. So that's probably my 3 most rostered exposure guys.
I've kind of mentioned this guy's name a couple times already. Not only am I old, but I'm cheap. I'm incredibly frugal, and I'm always looking for a great deal. I mean, that's what whole best ball is, late rounds. That's kind of what you're looking for. And with the Canadian-U.S. exchange rate on currency, I mean, I'd be even more frugal than normal. Donnelly. So the one guy I'm looking at is Corey Krosky. I mean, I love everything. He's not your typical rookie because he's like 24 already. So that's a little bit of a red flag. But the potential here for me in Cliff Kingsbury's offense is what has me intrigued. First off, the path to opportunity is there. Brian Robinson Jr. is what he is. He's a 3.5 yards per carry kind of guy. He'll get the job done down in the red zone. He'll catch a few passes, but he doesn't have that explosiveness that's going to be a game changer for the Commanders. Austin Eckler, a little bit older, has had some injuries in the past, but what really gets me here is when I take a look at the offense. You asked about some of those metrics that we kind of look into, and I kept part of that looking for that opportunity is finding offenses and run schemes that kind of fit you. And Kingsbury runs that inside zone run scheme 35% of the time. And they run on a shotgun, I think it was like 88% of the time. So that, both those things fit what Merritt did in college, mostly at New Mexico where he got most of his running, did a little bit of time there at Arizona, but that's kind of forgotten there. He averaged 7.2 yards per carry on 51% of inside rushing zones. So for me, it's telling me that the scheme fits Krosky Merritt probably better than the other running backs. And when he gets that opportunity, we've seen in a small sample what he can do with that opportunity. And for me, when we're talking about the 20th, 21st, 22nd round, this is a free play. This is the time you take a shot at a young player. This is the time you take a shot at guys that aren't probably going to be on anyone on this roster. Diami Brown, another guy who said, I love him. You mentioned Carolina Panthers, pretty much anyone on that roster. I'm all in on Tavian Sanders, Coker, Young. I mean, I really like all those guys, especially they're incredibly cheap, and that's kind of where I like to go, especially later on in the draft. So with that kind of all being said, I mean, if anyone else has a question, I think we got about 2 minutes, maybe if I'm lucky, to kind of maybe 60 seconds, give or take. If anyone else has anything, that'd be appreciated. I don't see him being a big star, but I think the Cleveland Browns are going to find a way to use him in multiple looks. I think you're seeing him in the backfield getting some opportunities, because we know that backfield doesn't look the same as what they hoped it would back in April. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see him lining up in the backfield, getting him in the slot. You're probably going to see him take some shots on wide too. So they'll move him around, kind of jack of all trades, master of none here in the first season. I mean, they got David Njoku, that's not going to change. That's where the bread and butter. We know what Flacco did with, I'm sorry, it's not going to be Shadir Sanders, it's not going to be Gabriel, it's not going to be anyone else. It's going to be Joe Flacco under center. And when Flacco was under center last time in Cleveland, Njoku was like the tight end 2 over that time period. So, Fannin, it's not going to be that tight end, but you can see him kind of move around the formation a little bit more. Okay, we're good? All right, anyone else is clear? Thank you guys for your time, and we've got the next panel here starting shortly.